If you love Paul Harvey-style stories, subscribe now.
And Heimberger was 35, a U.S. Naval Reserve lieutenant junior grade fresh out of boot camp. He had never seen a war up close before. Now on November 22nd, 1943, he was in the middle of one. The Allies were invading the Gilbert Islands in the Pacific. Marines were preparing to attack the Japanese stronghold of Tarawa, but their landing craft were stymied by coral reefs. 100 or so were stranded 2,000 yards from shore, easy pickings for Japanese machine gunners. Watching this massacre of American soldiers from the deck of the destroyer, Lieutenant Heimberger's mouth fell open in horror. "Why doesn't somebody do something?" he exclaimed to the sailor next to him. "At least try to rescue those kids." The other sailor shook his head. "Anyone who tries will get killed too." Ed Heimberger gritted his teeth. "That doesn't mean that nobody should try," he said. With that, the lieutenant put down his binoculars and started below. "Where you going?" the other sailor called out. He didn't answer. Only minutes later, observers aboard the Sheridan and the nearby Schroeder saw a tiny boat speeding away from the former, a small, shallow draft craft, piloted by a solitary sailor heading straight for the stranded Marines. That lone angel of mercy was, of course, Lieutenant Ed Heimberger. Approaching the watery battlefield, Ed was stunned by the sights staring back at him, by the sounds shattering his ears. Reef-bound Marine landing craft full of dead men and in flames. Uniformed bodies bobbing in the red-stained lagoon. And then the wounded drowning, the dying crying for help over the clatter of Japanese artillery fire. Ed slung his body over the side of his tiny vessel, clinging by an arm and a leg, reaching out to the screaming men. He pulled one aboard, then two, then three, and more. Angry machine gun bullets, searching for the 50-gallon drums of high-octane gasoline in the rear of his rescue craft, scattered the hull, missing it by inches. But the intrepid lieutenant, after jerking 6 or 7 Marines from the sea of death, sped back to the Sheridan, deposited them there, and then he headed out for more. His buddies insisted he would never make it back alive. But Ed Heimberger did make it back, along with 79 troops who otherwise surely would not have made it back. 79 wounded Marines were brought safely to the destroyers Sheridan and Schroeder in more than a dozen round-trip rescues by a 35-year-old sailor on his first invasion tour. When the war was over, the warriors went home. The Navy somehow forgot all about Lieutenant Heimberger and the reckless, selfless one-man mission that earned him the recognition he never received. That is, he did not receive it until October of 1997. For it was then, and it was by veterans in East Berlin, Pennsylvania, that the belated Bronze Star, inscribed with a V for valor, was bestowed on the man we had neglected to thank. Once upon a bloody lagoon in the Gilbert Islands, there was a lieutenant, fresh from boot camp, who remarkably set his own safety aside for the sake of his comrades. And then he returned stateside to be honored only as a character named Oliver Douglas, on a television comedy called Green Acres. I hope now you will always remember Lieutenant Edward Albert Heimberger, Eddie Albert, the hero of Tarawa, because now you know the rest of the story.